This is Tukey. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, one of the most transformative periods in a person's life, the early elementary years. And it all really starts with this one single question. Why are 6-year-olds, who were 6 yesterday, suddenly expected to act like elementary school students overnight?
It's such a sudden shift, isn't it? That period from about 6 to 9 is often called the 7-year-old wall. And it's a huge tipping point.
The tipping point.
Yeah, because the old preschool way of thinking is basically shutting down. And this new, much more complex mental operating system, the one you need to function in society, is being installed all at once.
Like a forced system-wide upgrade. So our mission today is to unpack what's actually in that upgrade, the cognitive tools for how they think, and the social framework for how they relate to others.
And we'll be looking at some really fascinating new research, mostly from the last few years, to do it.
Exactly. We're going to find out how the sophisticated things we do every day, like planning or feeling real empathy, were actually built in this incredibly short window.
Okay, so let's start with the central processing unit of this new OS executive function, EF.
Right. It's often called the brain's command center.
The command center.
Yeah, it's the set of cognitive skills that lets you control your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, all to achieve a goal. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child has this great analogy.
Oh, I think I know this one. The air traffic control system.
That's the one. Think about it. You've got all these flights, which are like thoughts and impulses, all trying to land at once. The control tower has to manage everything, prevent collisions, and make sure they all land on schedule.
That's a perfect image for managing all that mental chaos. And this system is developing so fast at this age, right? In the prefrontal cortex.
It is, because it's so plastic, so flexible then.
Yeah.
And there are really 3 core elements getting wired up.
Okay, what are they? So first, you have working memory.
Yeah.
This is the ability to, hold information in your mind and work with it.
Like remembering a teacher's instructions while you're also doing a worksheet.
Exactly that. Then number 2 is inhibitory control, the power to stop your impulses.
Resisting the urge to just shout out the answer.
Or to stop yourself from getting distracted by a toy when you should be doing homework. And the third is cognitive flexibility.
Switching gears.
Yep. Seamlessly moving from the rules of math to the rules of grammar. All of these basic school behaviors, staying in your seat, taking turns, they are all built on these 3 things.
So EF is the air traffic control tower. But there's another layer, right? The second tower that watches the first one. Metacognition.
Metacognition. It literally means thinking about thinking. It's like having an internal observer that watches you learn.
It lets you monitor yourself. Like, am I really getting this? Or maybe that study method didn't work so well.
Precisely. It's planning, monitoring, and then evaluating. But there's some brand new research. This is our Focus 1 from 2025 that looks at the relationship between the two, EF and metacognition.
And it's especially interesting for the younger kids in this age group.
It is. They gave kids these rule-switching tasks, and they found that when they asked the children to explain their thinking after the task.
You mean asking them how they got the answer?
Exactly. Asking, why did you pick that one? Or how did you figure out the rule? When they did that, the kids' performance on the next task went up significantly.
Wow. So just doing it wasn't enough. They had to talk about how they did it.
Precisely. And this effect was strongest in the 7-year-olds. See, by age 9, that process starts to become automatic, internal. But for a 7-year-old, the OS isn't automated yet.
So that external question from an adult, it actually helps train their brain.
It acts like a powerful external loop that directly boosts the command center. It turns reflection into real cognitive training.
Okay, so once that cognitive OS is installed, the next big update is the social one. You suddenly have to navigate a world full of other people with their own invisible minds.
And that's the theory of mind, or TOM. It's the ability to figure out that other people have their own beliefs, their own emotions that are totally separate from yours.
It's a huge intellectual leap, isn't it? You're basically forming a hypothesis about someone's internal state just based on what you can see.
It really is. And the classic way to show this is the false belief test.
Right, the one where someone hides a treat in a blue box.
But then someone else comes in and moves it to a red box while the first person is out of the room.
Yeah. And a younger child will say the first person is going to look in the red box because they know the truth.
But the child who has mastered theory of mind understands the separation. They get that the first person is operating on a false belief. They think the treat is still in the blue box because they didn't see it move.
And that single realization, I know something they don't, is the foundation for basically all of our complex social lives. Empathy, predicting behavior, even getting sarcasm.
Absolutely. And once they start understanding other minds, they turn their attention to rules. Now, older theories, from Piaget and others, saw moral growth as a single ladder you climb.
From focusing on punishment to focusing on conscience.
Right. But the modern view, social domain theory, completely changes that. It says children don't see rules as just one big thing. They sort them.
They sort them into different categories.
Much earlier than we used to think. So to make this really practical, think about these two scenarios. Scenario 1. Is it okay to hit someone if the teacher says it's a new rule and now you can?
Okay. And scenario 2.
Is it okay to call the teacher a nickname if they make a new rule that says it's allowed?
Ah, I see. And a child's brain gives two very different answers.
Totally different. Hitting is still wrong no matter what the new rule is. That's in the moral domain. It's about harm. It's universal.
But the nickname, if the rule changes, then it's okay.
Because that's in the conventional domain. It's an arbitrary social agreement, like a dress code. It can be changed. This shows us that these kids are incredibly sophisticated rule users. They know the difference between don't hurt people and line up quietly.
Which is a real challenge for adults, right?
Oh.
Are you enforcing a convention or are you teaching a moral truth?
And if you confuse the two, you can actually undermine their whole belief system. It's easier to just say because it's the rule, but this research really suggests that being clear about what kind of rule it is critical.
So as this social OS gets up and running, kids just dive headfirst into the world of friendship. And the importance of peers just skyrockets.
It really does. Having positive peer relationships is directly linked to better academic achievement, not just mental health.
Yeah.
And the research has moved away from, just counting how many friends a kid has.
To focusing on the quality of the friendship.
Exactly. Things like trust, support, how they resolve conflicts.
And we have a great look at this from our FOCIS 2, a big longitudinal study from 2022 that tracked friendship quality over time. So it's not a snapshot, it's a video.
That's a great way to put it. They tracked thousands of kids for 2 years and found 4 different patterns or trajectories. And the group that had the worst school adaptation, so more academic struggles, more mental health issues, was what they called the low stable group.
Low stable. Yeah. So the kids whose friendship quality started low and just stayed there. It didn't get better.
That's it, exactly. The risk isn't having a bad day or a fight with a friend. The real danger is that stagnation, that pattern where the quality is low and it's just fixed.
Because they're not getting the practice they need to build those skills.
Right. The skills for resolving conflict, for building trust. We have to look for movement, for improvement, not just where they are today.
Which brings us to the big question. Can friendship actually be taught? Or do we just let it happen? FOCIS Street, a 2025 study, has a really strong answer.
A very strong answer. This study in Turkey looked at something called friendship ties education. They directly taught third graders skills for making and keeping friends.
And the results?
They were conclusive. The group that got the training showed significantly better well-being and peer relationships than the control group.
And what's also interesting is that another group, one that just did cooperative learning, so working together on tasks, they also did much better than the control group.
It really confirms that friendship isn't just luck. You need a two-pronged approach.
Direct instruction on the skills.
And a positive, structured environment where those skills can be practiced and friendships can actually form. Adults can and should use both of those tools.
All right, let's pivot to some of the modern challenges that affect this whole OS installation. First, the motivation cliff.
Ah, yes. The big drop in intrinsic motivation learning just for the fun of it that we see as kids get older.
It's a huge concern.
To understand it, we can use self-determination theory. It says that for intrinsic motivation to thrive, it needs 3 psychological nutrients.
Like a plant needs sun and water.
Exactly. You need autonomy, which is the feeling of choice. You need competence, feeling like you're capable. And you need relatedness, that sense of connection and belonging.
When you look at it that way, the motivation cliff starts to look less like a kid's fault and more like an environmental issue.
And that's the key finding from a 2022 study. It found the drop in motivation was directly correlated with students feeling like their teachers were supporting their autonomy less and less as they moved up grades.
So more rigidity, more control, more tests.
Right. And that environment just starves those basic psychological needs. It's also worth noting that the feeling of competence was the strongest predictor of whether motivation stayed high.
Okay, let's talk about the other huge environmental factor, screen time. The conversation seems to have moved beyond just setting a timer.
It has. It's more about content and context now, but the most robust theory is probably the displacement hypothesis.
Meaning the real problem isn't the screen itself.
But what the screen time is replacing, it displaces the things that are absolutely fundamental for building all these skills we've been talking about: reading, creative play, real back and forth conversations.
And there's a pretty shocking study on this, our FOSI-CAS4, the Quebec longitudinal study, which tracked kids from a very, very early age.
They looked at kids' TV viewing at age 2, which is a time of incredible brain plasticity. And then they followed up when those same kids were 10.
Right.
The results were so clear. Every extra hour of TV at age 2 was correlated years later with significant drops. For example, a 7% lower rate of class participation and a 6% drop in math scores at age 10.
That's an 8-year gap. The effect has a really long shadow.
It does. Losing that crucial interaction time at age 2 when the brain is wiring itself creates a developmental opportunity loss. The effects just compound over the years. It even impacts things like math, which depends so heavily on working memory.
So the lack of that rich, interactive experience during those foundational years prevents the wiring from forming correctly.
That cascading effect is probably the most profound challenge screens pose to this whole OS installation process.
This whole deep dive really makes it clear that these early elementary years are the OS installation phase for, well, everything we do as adults.
It's so true. The ability to plan, to really feel empathy for someone, to question rules, it all runs on the toolkit that was installed back then.
And if we go back to that very first insight we talked about, the one about metacognitive questioning.
From Focus 1, yeah. For the 7-year-old, being asked how they found an answer was the key. That external reflection helped automate their thinking.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener. How often do you apply that same metacognitive questioning to your own life now?
Do you ever stop and ask, why am I always using this approach? Or, did this habit I had for years actually work effectively? It's like running the ultimate diagnostic on the OS that was installed all those years ago.
Is